um,
This meeting is being recorded.
so, um, my week was tough. I mean, yeah. um, I still, still recovering from the effects of had being sick last month and everything. But one of the challenges that I've been recovering from that. But one of the challenges I've been dealing with has been communication in my relationship, and it's kind of been like I feel like um, we're speaking a different language, and kind of got this is a point where I feel like, especially for me, I've been really trying to make more of an effort to understand um, where my wife is coming from. Uh, but it's been kind of it's been hard because it's like, and the type of person that I am, I kind of have memory problems and stuff. So, and I'm more of a big picture type of person. So I don't necessarily. It's kind of harder for me to like remember things, especially like really like details. Um, and so that's a challenge for me. But one of the things that I've been working on to improve that is really be more try to be more focused, write things down a lot more, and different things like that. So that's been helping. But it's also been like, because we kind of have that past of um, you know um, with me being like the one that my memory isn't as sharp, and my spouse being having a memory like my father's, where like it's like a steel trap, can pretty much remember anything. So one of the things, but in the effort to like continue to further grow, um, is where at the particular point, especially for me, and for my position, um, is that this is a thing that is necessary for me to be able to do. And in terms of my communication, I guess has come to my mind. So as far as that goes, uh, I've been able to become more of an active listener, but like in terms of um, and even becoming more of an active listener, I'm also being able to more accurately be able to express myself. But even doing so, it's a challenge because of I have to be like really exact in the things that I say and exact in the things that I mean. And it's a challenge for me to that I'm working towards to get better at. So um, that's part of the thing that I've dealt with. And then as far as we're still dealing with autism, my son having been on autism spectrum and stuff. So he's been in, this was his first week, or he actually has been in school for a couple of weeks now. Unfortunately, we've been able to get services for his ABA. It's called Applied Behavioral Analysis for Autism. So uh, like one of the challenges that he has is that regulating his sleep. Like a lot of times he may only get like 3 to 4 hours of sleep, but with him being able to be in school and then be in the therapy, it allows us to be able to get him back on a schedule. So he's had like 3 or 4 nights in a row where he's actually been able to sleep like a good portion of the night, 8 to 10 hours, and it kind of helps us to be able to like be able to function ourselves without having to try to deal with him during the night and different things like that. And especially that's that historically that's been a pretty big challenge for my wife. And it's something that I've tried to make uh an effort to, you know, restructure our life, like putting him in school and getting these other resources so that so much is not falling on her and everything like that. So that's kind of like what's been going on with me. Uh, so I stopped there.
All right. Thanks, Ryan. Does anybody have any questions for Ryan or any comments?
Not really particularly, but just in general, one thing that stuck out in my mind was when he first talked about communication problems, and he mentioned specifically that it felt like sometimes he and his wife were speaking a different language. So that was just something that was interesting that is kind of stuck in my mind with what he shared. Communication between couples. We talked about a little bit, Uncle Tracy, yesterday, how to work through stalemates or things that you don't understand, who initiates, that kind of thing. So anyway, I just thought that was interesting.
Mhm. Any other comments or questions for Brian? Brian, what did you mean by at one point you said you had to be exact in what you say and how you communicate? What, I didn't get a clear picture there. What did you mean?
So the way that my wife communicates and the way that she the way that her process is that she's very detailed with the way that she says things, and she's also very detailed with how interpreting basically what is said to her. So I wouldn't say that's a strong suit of mine, of being able to accurately describe things per se. Like, and I'll kind of give you this is kind of like one of the things that we were talking one of the things that we were talking about is that, like,
Go ahead, feel free. Feel this safe.
So she said that she doesn't snore, right? And so I said that she does. And she was like, nope, I don't. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna record you. So I recorded her. And then I said, hey, this is you snoring. And she's like, oh, this isn't snoring. Basically, like, I consider, for me, snoring is like any type of noise or whatever that you might be making while you're sleeping. You know, it's for her, it's really more so like breathing hard, you know. But that was her interpretation of it. It's like her interpretation is like, yeah, this isn't snoring. Well, I'm thinking it's snoring. And so there was the disconnect there, because it's like I have to be able to explain things exactly like how she would interpret it. So that's does that answer your question?
Yes, that answered my question. That's very interesting to me, to dig into that and really find out what that is, what's going on. There are some people who are critical, so to speak. I would say understand the difference between critical and someone who is just highly detailed. In one sense, I'm detailed, and when Beverly and I are talking, she's not very detailed, and so I don't know. We've worked through it, learned to work, and I've learned to ask certain questions and different things like that to get the details that I need from her. But also, there's a time where I'm trying to see how to describe it. I know some other people that are like this. That if you are actually, and I don't know if this is what you're really, if this is the framework of it, if you are actually being critical, or not in the negative, but just in the neutral, I am constructively criticizing you, or I'm pointing out a flaw or something like that in a person, then they have the way that they hear it with a critical ear. Does that make sense? So that's why I said it's important to understand if you're saying that she is actually very detailed, or when you are actually pointing out something that can make her uncomfortable, she hears with a very critical or detailed ear. And if you don't explain it exactly the way that she did it, she will not agree. She will not see it that way. Are you talking about that, or are you really talking about she's detailed? Did that make sense in my question? Can you see the difference?
Yeah, it's kind of like a combination of both. Hold on a second. Hold on, I got the big boy. Give me a second.
Hi, little man. So,
what's up? Just gotta skip
so
these
I
ads.
just, while Brian is doing that, just kind of continue with what I was saying, or
There you
getting
go,
feedback
big
on
boy.
that.
Up there. All right. Sorry about that, everyone.
No problem.
So
You said it's a combination
yeah,
of both.
I would say it's kind of like a combination of both. Because she's always very detailed. And the type, that's kind of like the type of person that she is. It's not just like with me, but just in her relationship with people in general, you know. And then as far as being critical, like she's more critical of me. But in my defense, sometimes I'm like, hey, like I try to look at it from like try to bring up as a balanced perspective, and not necessarily defend myself, but try to bring up what my perspective is from what's going on. So, and I don't think that's necessarily trying explain it at all, but I'd probably have to give an example. But does that make a little bit more sense?
Yeah, to me, it makes sense.
I can't hear you.
The reason why that's
You're
important
on mute
to
because
me.
I can't hear you. Can anybody else hear you? Or is it just me?
So you can't hear me?
I can hear you.
You can hear me?
Try again. Yeah, I can hear you now. Sorry, that was on my end.
Okay, the reason why that's important, we don't have to spend a lot more time on it, but the reason why that is important is if she is just detailed, just a highly detailed person, that is a common. There's no problem with that. But if a person is actually indicating, if they're really indicating to you every time that you say something to them, or whenever you say something to them, and you have to say it exact, because if you don't say it exact, they deny they deny it. The way that it is supposed to work, the way that we're supposed to work is we're always listening to understand or comprehend what a person is actually saying. So if you're saying something to me and you're coming to me with a criticism, and when I say criticism, I'm saying in the neutral. It is not wrong. It's not saying that. I'm saying constructively. So, in short, if you were coming to me and constructively criticizing, there is, I had done something that you said you felt like was a violation to you. I am supposed to be working toward hearing and understanding what you're saying. I am not supposed to be working toward finding what's wrong with what you're saying and then disagreeing with it. The way that our society actually works, a lot of times, not everybody, but a lot of people listen and they're searching for what's wrong with what you're saying. And when they find that, they disagree or they don't accept it. But the real behavior is to find what is the right, or I'm not trying to find what's wrong. I'm trying to understand. I'm trying to get whatever information that I need, and then from there, address it. So the part of the reason why it's important to me is it can go back to childhood on how a child was heard, how a child was, how they tried to explain something or tried to say something to a parent and the parent denied it or did not listen to them, different things like that. I'm kind of explaining it backwards, but it would.
You basically, yeah.
Yeah.
You're talking
it
about
would make
trauma,
them,
right?
Yeah. It's a traumatic point. And this is why they are very protective of themselves. That's what it would be. And so I was trying to see if you're saying she's protecting herself versus she's very, she's just very detailed. And you can tell, you should be able to tell the difference between a person who is really protecting themselves or they're just detailed, because they're not, it doesn't give a feeling of being real critical. Someone who is just detailed, so to speak.
Okay.
Did that make sense?
That makes sense, but it's kind of hard for me to be able to tell the difference.
Right.
Kind of depending on the scenario.
Yeah.
Yeah. The way that it's kind of played out, I think for me, has been on the critical side. Um, and I just feel like it's just and it relates to, you know, different things
Yeah.
within our relationship and stuff like that. So
Well, what I would share with what's coming to my mind, and what I just share a little bit, and we'll move on, is we've in the men's group, we've talked a few years. I mean, not a few years. We've been going for a little over 2 years, I think. But about a year ago or so, we talked about chauvinism, so to speak, male-centric world, male-centric society, and basically what that has caused in women, how it's affected women, and what that has caused. And so some of those areas, in short, that you're talking about, Brian, some of those can be due to that male chauvinism, male-centric world, those kind of things like that. And so they are, those are things that over time, if you correct it, if it's correct in your relationship, different things like that, over time, they will they will be able to heal from that and not have reactions to what is being said, so to speak. Well, it's a little something. I'm cutting there. I'm not going through a whole lot of detail. And if you have questions, I don't mind, but I'm just trying to get through that part.
Well, I'm a Johnny come lately, so I'm not trying to, you know, mess things up too much. So
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Okay. Anybody else? How was your week? Tell me about your week.
Well, kind of, I don't want to mix things, but kind of on the same topic as what Brian was sharing. Some of what my week was learning consistency. So, and even how I see that tying in with community. What you brought up at the end about trauma and working through it to get to the point where you're no longer squirmish, you're no longer you know what I mean, words don't have the same effect and make you have a behavior that is less than standard. Getting to that point with consistency. So yeah, so that's kind of how my week's been in terms of behavior. So communication, right? So, and it's not to just try to make everything spiritual, but I had been kind of thinking about Pharisees, and it's kind of what I was hearing with some of what you're saying at the end, in terms of everybody has trauma. It's not something new. Everybody has trauma. What we've done in the society is normalizing, not addressing the root of the trauma, addressing either different branches, leaves, different symptoms, instead of getting to the heart of the problem. And I think one of the roots to lack of communication, things like that, lack of standard, has to come with consistency, or has to do with consistency or the lack thereof. So how I'm trying to talk about how this has affected my week, or what I went through in the week, is we've been doing a a demolition job. And while I'm at the job, it's like, oh my goodness, I can't wait for this to get over. Like, you know what I mean? I don't want to be here. This is 8 hours out of my day. Like, I could be doing something, like, you know, there's nothing else I could be doing, you know what I mean? But it's always those thoughts, that behavior of coping and only, you know, not getting to the root of the problem, which is consistency or a lack thereof, where it's, yeah, consistency and communication has been kind of what, how my week has gone, I guess, because I've noticed too that my communication starts to diminish whenever I'm not thinking about consistency. So whenever I'm thinking either big picture or small picture in terms of, oh dang, I gotta work 8 hours today, or I can't wait to see where I'm at in 2-3 years. You know what I mean? That's when communication can start to diminish, because it's like, you, instead of being vulnerable, you go to your own little pocket of your world, right? So something that you talk about a lot is Sabbath, and how we're all experiencing the same events. And it's like, yeah, so consistency, being consistent in understanding that it's not a mundane thing. It's not like, so a day, not just work or anything, but a day is not mundane. It's not meant to be mundane. We're meant to enjoy our lives. We were put here to, not in excess or anything like that, but in the neutral and the true sense, we were put here and meant to have everything that we desire, type of thing. So, you know, something that you kind of even talked about last week with David and Bathsheba, I think, how, you know, he could have asked for anything, and that's not, oh, hey, I want this man's wife. But the concept of consistency is kind of how I feel my week was.
Okay.
I would like to tie into that because it made a lot of sense for me, especially after hearing Brian and Jalen talk. My week has been about what I would call advocating, and how my wife needs somebody to advocate for her. My children need somebody to advocate for them. And when I hear Brian talk, it reminds me that my wife, when she gets critical, that she's often looking for security, or she doesn't feel secure. And not taking that personally, because it may not be me that is making her feel insecure, but understanding what needs to happen, or the need that is being presented in order to be able to help that out. And how advocating doesn't just go, it starts with your wife, it starts with your children, but if you talk about big picture, it starts going into other places like the workplace, the people that you meet from day to day, and how we're supposed to be able to understand and form intimate relationships and advocate for them. And that's been on my mind this week.
Interesting, Micaiah. That's interesting. That's good, though. I think, like you said, when she's not feeling secure, how she responds, things like that, critical, detail, whatever. So I think you're on track.
I'd like to piggyback off of that real quick, because that's what he was saying. I think was more of an articulate way of kind of say what I was saying. But it's like, and for me, because he was talking about like the way that you do it. Like for me, because I've been an advocate for a while, And a lot of my advocating has kind of been for, from the bigger, I guess you can say from outside, more bigger picture. But now I've recognized, in the recent months, even longer than that, just how I kind of have to shift that back to the basics, which is my wife and my son, making sure that I'm advocating for them. And like he was saying, uh, um, being able to, like, I guess for me is being able to and I think you were talking about this as well, is being able to not to hear what's being said, but also being able to, like, make make decisions as far as, okay, this is what is actually needed. Like the security thing, what you mentioned, Makaya, that's big. Um, because like, and especially for us, because we've just had so many things that, as far as, my son dealing with autism and me being paralyzed and different things like that, it's a lot of pressure, and especially on her. So like the way that I've kind of, what I've been trying to do is really um, advocate for her and for our family even more by recognizing, okay, we need to do certain things that will lift that pressure off, such as what I was talking about, putting them in school and different other things. So uh, I want to say, I think Makai really kind of just kind of articulated where I was coming from. So
That makes sense.
What's interesting about it to me is that dealing with patriarchy and male-centered society, we know that a lot of the things that men have done to women and the way they've handled women is coming back to roost. It's we're seeing the effects of it now in the women that we interact with. And sometimes I know for myself, I'll speak for myself, that I have certain tendencies that trigger certain responses. And those tendencies aren't always negative. They're just the way I am. But they trigger certain responses, and having to understand that, yes, I may have an innocent idea of the way I'm acting right now or what I'm doing right now, but at the same time, I need to understand that she needs to feel safe so that she can work through some of the stuff that she's working with. It's not about me.
All right. Anybody else?
It's so hard because, again, I'll be brief. What I'm hearing you talk about, again, is not to just try to spiritualize everything, but in the true sense of the foundation that was set for Jesus, for the perfect man, where it's like being consistent on a day-to-day. Because again, it's like something I feel we gloss over is that just because he was perfect, that's not the picture of perfection. Is a process. It is that consistent process to finally come. So let patience have her perfect work, that type of thing, where it's like his whole foundation was built off of taking care and advocating for his family. Like, where it's like, yeah, that's what I was hearing you talk about, that it's very easy to have an innocent idea or a innocent thought about how you are, and from that point you can ignore the true need, the true point that is being brought up. Yeah, so that's it.
So I have a question for everyone. How do you hear someone? Like,
What'd you say,
is-
Chad? What's your question?
How do you hear someone? I mean, we're talking about communication, and especially when it comes to like men hearing women, and in the sense of hearing what their need is. Like, is there a standard for this communication and hearing? How does one go about, like, I want to hear what my woman has to say, or I want to hear what my child has to say? Is there some sort of standard or process or order by which, hey, if I do this, I will be able to hear?
I would answer that simply and say, and I know there's more details to this, but my simple answer is to prove them right. Prove them right, and you'll hear it.
I would need more details by what you mean by prove them right. I'm not sure what you mean.
I have a son, and he this might not break it down completely, but I have a son, and he's a challenge sometimes. Sometimes we've raised him to where he's able to say no, and he says no frequently and quite willingly. So I would be like, come on, let's go do this. And he'll be like, no. And I'm like, well, you have to go take a bath. This is a non-negotiable. You have to take a bath regardless. We're not going to live with you. You stink. This is normal human things that you have to do. And he's like, no. And then it goes into, in my life, that wouldn't have been the thing that you were able to do. You can't say no. You're getting dragged, you're getting whooped, you're getting cussed out, whatever. But having to step back and take a step back from my anger because he's telling me no and I'm his father and I'm just trying to do what he's supposed to, make him do what he's supposed to do. Having to take a step back from that and say, okay, there's a reason he's saying no, and he doesn't have to take a bath right now. We can work through this. That's part of advocating and proving him right.
Okay, that makes sense to me. Especially, so like in your process or order, the first step would kind of be like taking a step back.
Yes, because a lot of
Which
emotions tend to come up because we have been part of the patriarchy and we've been raised under the patriarchy. So a lot of emotions will come up when we see something that looks out of whack to us. And our first instinct is to subdue. So we have to take a step back from that subdue and say, okay, I don't have to subdue this. I can figure out how to make this work.
Okay, and that makes sense. In my mind, I look at that first step as to die. I would relate it to death, and kind of death to self. Taking a step back and you're letting go of your want, will, desire, wish, whatever, which I relate to kind of the death part where you have to die. And so, yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
I think that like connecting with Micaiah, so that hearing, I say it this way. Hearing, well, when Adam and Eve was one, you could say they understood each other. When God separated Adam and Eve, they could no longer hear each other. And to, when I say hear, or I'm saying for understand, they did not understand one another. When y'all separate, the reason why they did not understand one another is because now had an ego. Before there was no ego, they were one. When they separated them, they both hearing in order to hear your spouse, you have to get rid of your ego. That's the thing that's always going to, he says, will translate what she says, you're going to hear different than what she's saying, all because of your ego, or vice versa. If I'm experience, I see a lot in my relation, my spouse, that how that a lot of things was misunderstood simply because of my ego. And when I began to remove that, which was very, very painful, I could understand her. And so that's a very simple way of looking at it. I was also, another analogy, or an example, I guess, would be how the body functions. The head sends the command to the arm, and the arm hears the command in the head. The arm receives the command from the head, and the arm responds to that command. That's hearing. Hearing is supposed to, it's not just, in Hebrew is an act or an action oriented. So hearing, it requires, it's not something you hear and you just hear it. It just goes around in your head and that's where it stops. Hearing is, there has to be a response. So if you hear your wife, you respond. They cause you respond a certain way. When you don't hear your wife, because of your ego, it causes you to point the finger at her. So, something's wrong with you. So that's the kind of way I look at that. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, it did.
In short, my tidbit to add to that is that hearing how you know that you really heard someone is that you understand their need. And so someone can actually say something. What I picked up in the example that Micaiah was giving with his son and his behaviors and how he's behaving, he's saying no, whatever, all of those kind of things. Those things are indicating something. They're indicating a need. And as it indicates that need, as he continues on trying to understand, listen, what's really going on? Then he finds out, this is what he's needing, because the need is what the driving force, everybody's need is the driving force for the things that they do. It's whatever the need is the driving force for the things, how you behave, whether you're demanding or you're insistent or whatever, is going to be according to the need that you have as a person. So I would say it that way. Go ahead.
It's one thing to do it with my children. It's another thing to do it with my wife. because there are trauma often on both sides, and you say, okay, well, we're complete opposites. We don't do anything the same. So how am I ever going to agree with somebody that sees the world completely opposite of I do? And that seems like, to me, the ultimate challenge. It seems like that challenge should be conquered first before children ever come into the picture, because if you cannot understand or hear your wife, it makes it a lot harder to hear and understand your children. Because the way it seems God designed it is that in order for two people to come one, everything has to die.
Mm-hmm. So that's interesting. Again, Micaiah, when you say the way what I wasn't fully clear, but it almost seemed like you were saying that it's, you said it's one thing to hear the need of your son, and it can be a totally different thing in essence to hear a need of your wife or another adult. And in my mind, if that's what part of what you were saying, is I can see that, from we give some space for a child, their behaviors, the way they think, act, the things they do. We give some space because we know that they don't understand or they don't know on all of those kind of things. But an adult, so to speak, we feel like they should understand. Then the other thing that came to my mind when you were saying that was the thought of I have needs too. I have needs too. So, who's supposed to understand who? This kind of goes into what I think CJ said in his last comment. Who is supposed to understand who? I have certain desires and things, and she needs to try to understand me. And we start getting into those kind of situations. So that's what the other thing that came to my mind. So anyway, was that kind of what you were?
Yes, that was what I was trying to get at. The verse that comes to mind is the enmity between the man and the woman. I think that is a part of it. I think that also when it comes to adults, there's more gunk in the way than children. Children don't have as much stuff in the way of vulnerability as adults do. So it takes a lot longer working with adults to actually get to the bottom of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was kind of what I was saying when you just mentioned something about who's supposed to understand each other first or something like that. That was a major problem I had. That's what I'm calling it, because you feel your ego is it's all about you. It's all your ego's all about you, what your interests are, what you like, and it's so dominating. It's dominating, and so if you and when I'm in example in my house, I would, if my child was trying to show something to me, something I did wrong or something they didn't like that I was doing, I couldn't hear that because I always felt like, no, I am to tell you what's wrong. You don't tell me. You don't correct me. I correct you. You do as I say, no question asked. And so I had a major ego problem, and I had the same listen, my spouse. It was the same way. So I had to, in order to be able to hear my spouse, hear my children, I had, there's something that y'all had to remove, and that was my ego. And I had to go through something very humiliating, and to remove that, to be able to hear them. Because I can tell you, if I didn't have an ego, if I didn't lose my ego last week when Chris Jr. was saying, what did he say? I would have said, no, I would have jumped in and said, no, something wrong with you. It wasn't like that, yada, 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 yada. And I would have been about protecting myself. And, but when you lose your ego, you're humble and you take on a form of more of a servant position to your family instead of a pharaoh, or, it's all about you. And you learn to, and it's like, I'll give you another thing that came to me yesterday, and I told her to come cook dinner. And she came to me, and actually she went into the dining room, and she just wouldn't come out the dining room. So I called her, and she come to me, and like, did you hear me? She said, yes. I said, well, why come you didn't come? How come you didn't come towards me? She said, the way you asked me to do it made me angry. I said, why is that? She said, because it feels like you're forcing me. So if I had an ego, I would have jumped all on her. You just do what I say because I said to do it. That's what the ego would have done. But it made me feel what she's saying. She's feeling like the way I asked her, I'm controlling her with the way I'm asking her. And so in short, I told her, when you feel that, I want you to let me know so I can adjust what I'm saying so that you don't feel that way. There's no way I could hear that. No way. So yeah, it's I just think that it's the beginning point for a man is that he has to let go of his ego in order to be able to serve his house. No.
That's yeah. Again, I'm getting tired of speaking because it's like I keep on trying to spiritualize everything. But what I just heard you talk about was, so in Genesis, when it talks about my spirit will not always strive with man, as well as hear, O Israel, the Lord your God is one God. So what I'm trying to say is, having what the foundation, what the consistency and the communication that was founded over here allowed for was what we read about later, right? But what you're talking about is having to know that you're the head of your house, right? You're a man, you know what I mean? You're the head. Knowing that, dying to that, and that's actually how you are the head, where it's by being one with those that you're advocating for. Where it was interesting to me because when Mac was talking, the story of Job came to mind, and then Uncle Tracy was talking about, and this is against CJ. I hope I'm not putting him on the spot, but he talks about this stuff a lot. But with Job, where it's like when you start reading Job, it seems like you just start in the middle of his life, and if you don't have the foundation that's set in Genesis, so my spirit will not always strive with man, and what that actually means, what that dying process actually looks like, as well as hear, O Israel, that the Lord your God is one, in terms of there is no ego. So that separating point, that point that you were talking about with Adam and Eve when they were separated, and that's how the understanding came to an end. So if you don't have that and you read Job, it'll seem like, again, it's a tit for tat, right? Well, my wife should just listen to me. I have all the instructions, but it's like, what that is showing is the process of him consistently and actively listening so that he can fulfill the need, whether it was said correctly, whether the detail was there, that didn't matter. It wasn't on them. It was like what you were saying at the end, where it's, if I am doing something incorrectly, I need you to come and address that. This is not a one-way line of communication where I say, do 10 jumping jacks and you do 10 jumping jacks. You know what I mean? It's never about force.
Well,
There's been a lot that's said, so I'm trying to think about how I can condense it so I don't go on for too long. But on one hand, the beginning of the conversation, what Uncle Tracy was talking about, I was just thinking through when he was talking about critical and detail, just kind of going through some of the details of that, which is interesting because I would say that I'm a detailed person. I'm also critical and have been or am, depending on who you ask, I guess, struggling with working from being critical in the negative or the extreme. I think that one of the things that he brought up, which is true, is generally how people are critical is generally to find fault in something. And I don't believe that is, so when Uncle Tracy talked about the neutral of critical, a couple of things popped up in my head. On one, when David killed Goliath with his stones, I see that as being critical. I also see in the story of Solomon and the two women, the two harlots who are contesting who is the mother of the baby in question. I see that in one sense more as a representation of what critical is in the neutral or in the true. But with all that being said, I'm just trying to get some things off my mind. One other thing that was interesting to me that was said was when you all talk about here. So Micaiah mentioned it with his in the situation with his child and with his wife. And I know that Uncle Tracy has talked about this as well. One of the words that popped up in my head with what Micaiah shared specifically was innocence. Even when you were talking about how with a lot of people or adults, if you want to say that, who have gone through life with unresolved trauma, with not with no foundation by which to judge something. That's where here to me kind of becomes tricky, because I've run into issues in relationships, and this is something that I've been trying to understand or process through, where someone will say that if you don't take them, quote unquote, for their word, then you don't hear them. And I think Uncle Tracy mentioned that if you hear someone, then you understand their need. And this is something that I spoke with him yesterday. We don't necessarily understand our needs. We don't necessarily understand me just as much as anyone else understand why we say something or understand what we're saying when we use our words. I don't know how to say that. There's a point. It's I think it kind of comes up in the issue between man and woman as well, or between generations, is that there might be a particular sound or something unique about how someone talks or how someone communicates, a woman versus a man, but there is a common foundation language when you all, or we've talked about original language when Uncle Tracy talks about human behavior. That's something in my mind or whatever that kind of sets up a framework and things exist within that. But there, just to kind of give it an illustration of kind of how I see hearing being tricky is, so if you consider where the children of Israel leave Egypt and they're in the wilderness and they're saying, you brought us out to die, we don't have food, we don't have water. In one sense, it can, I guess, be seen as an accusation. God doesn't understand, doesn't hear their need, doesn't understand. But that's the opposite. And so when Uncle Tracy mentioned the point of understanding a need, that's something, even in the point of critical, that can be maybe hard to wrap your mind around. I think I see critical and the neutral of critical to, I see it related to details, but I also, to being detailed, but I also see it in the sense of what you guys have mentioned in getting to the heart or the root of something. And in a neutral sense, if that makes sense. So it's not to find fault. It can involve correction, but even when you talk about the point of training or proving what something is or what something is to be, that's how I see critical. And it is something that gets to the essence or heart of something. I think that generally what can be difficult for people is, kind of what people have mentioned before, areas in which we protect ourselves from or by what we've experienced, but it's almost like giving a general framework or trying to find fault in what's said and not hear the essence of truly what's being said. But anyway, those are just a couple of thoughts. So yeah, I'll leave it there.
I have a statement to make concerning the question about, like who should hear who first. And I could be wrong, but I am pretty sure that women and children both are inclined to hear when their needs are met.
Women and children are both are what?
Are inclined to hear a man, the father, when their needs are met.
When they're, yes, that's a true.
And if a woman's needs are not being met, how can she hear the man? Same with the child. If a child's needs are not met, how can the child hear the father? Wouldn't that cause a breakdown in the hearing?
Would
So
they
it
be
would
then
place
try to
the man, to me, that would place man as the head, as the one accountable to do the initial hearing.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, and I was kind of discussing this with a friend though, and she's a very liberated woman, independent woman, due to toxic masculinity in her life and all. But, my explanation of man as the head is like sort of like a river. And you have a head of a river and everything flows from that head, good or bad, whatever. And so communication in a family is all going to flow from the father. Being able to hear one another in a family or a marriage will always flow from the man first. And that's just the order or process of things as described from what I read in the scriptures. And I think that we need more accountability for men as the head and less of the boss action. Because to me, being the head that doesn't mean being the boss. That means you're accountable. You're the first one who's going to get all the blame for everything that's wrong. That's kind of the position of head that I see. It's not a dominant form, it's rather a more accountable form of position.
Okay.
I think that's interesting, partially because I think it brings to the table kind of like what you touched on, Chad, the dynamic and how it works. So just to give a point of contrast, I feel like it is easy, or how we see, hear, or listen is not how it's presented in the Bible. And this is something that Uncle Tracy, I'm sure, can give a lot more detail on. But to kind of give a contrast, we have a misrepresentation of it. So for example, if you take general idea of you said toxic masculinity or patriarchal society, and how women and children are positioned to hear or to listen to the man or their father, and how that structure is set up. That is, in one sense, the misrepresentation of the opposite of the reverse of it. And again, I was mainly just saying that to kind of bring out a point of contrast, or sort of what you see today. But it's also interesting because before, one of the things that it mentions in the Old Testament, before the children of Israel are led out of Egypt, I don't know the specific verse or what the verse specifically says, but it mentions something about God hearing them. I don't know quite the words that are used, but that idea, and then being able to so understanding the need, that sort of general idea that you guys have brought out, and what hearing is, but then also being able to, it also reminds me of a process that we have to go to be able to hear, to be able to see, because it gets into kind of what we've talked about before, in an issue of judgment. I don't know if that quite makes sense, but it, just to kind of give an idea to maybe help clarify, there are different points where it talks about, the Bible talks about deafness and blindness, and it uses it in one sense, non-literally or metaphorically. And that's kind of where my mind is about going through. Uncle Tracy talked about it yesterday, going through a renewing or healing process, and how that corrects how you hear, how you see something, how you react, how you handle situations. So anyway.
Okay, so anybody else? Um, I don't know if anybody else wants to share anything on that. Brian, I would ask you if you're there, does it still sound like is there still a different language?
Well, what? Say that again. You were
said
asking me what? No, I said ask the question again.
Okay. No, I asked, does it sound like we're still speaking a different language when we try to talk about hearing and things like that?
Oh, it's no. I mean, I guess from what we've been talking about, especially when I think that was Chad who brought that up, or someone else who brought that. I think Chad was bringing it up as far as if the needs are met, it's easier for spouse and children to actually that's when they can hear. So if if I'm or anyone that's ahead is following those proper steps, then that's what actually opens it up for proper communication and for clearing up the speaking a different language. So yeah. So it just kind of clarifies for me, I think, what more so my role is,
Okay.
if that makes sense.
Yeah. The word here, it's real root meaning means to understand. And so the Hebrew, the biblical, those things, it really means to understand. And as you all have heard me say before, the word obey also means to understand or hear. It means to hear or understand. That's the root meaning of it. I'm gonna try to go and the next 30 minutes or so. We'll try to go into just slightly a little different area or subject. It came from a conversation that I was having yesterday with Kayla. And I can't remember my mind won't recall right now all of the conversation, but part of what came to my mind was a particular scripture. So I'm just going to ask a question and see how you all see that. And it is in, let me look at it real quick. It's in 1 Timothy, the 4th chapter, and it is the 12th verse. It says, let no man despise thy youth, but be thou an example of the believers in word, in conversation, in charity, in spirit, in faith, in purity, till I come. So the question is that I have is, what does that mean? Let no man despise thy youth. We have some young fellows in this group. What does it mean by let no man despise thy youth? What does that sound like it mean? What do you think it's saying?
That's it. For me, and I'm sorry, I don't know who else was gonna talk. but I'll make it brief. It's just for those. I feel like it's what it's saying is that you have the authority from God, and that since you have that authority, what men say um, doesn't have an effect on you and your ministry and things like that. That's a kind of how um, that's what comes to my mind, I guess.
All right, condense
And
it down. I didn't really understand you. Say it again.
so what he's saying from my perspective is that you have the authority from God. So in your ministry and the things that you do, so don't allow men to from that because you have don't allow them to or don't allow that to disqualify you or challenge you because you have the authority from God.
So if a person is actually, let's see if I can get clear understanding. If we're gonna talk religious and the religious, how the religious world does this. If I felt like God called me to be a preacher, something like that, and I'm confident that this is what God called me, and to do, I start preaching different things like that, and someone comes up to me and they start saying, it's interesting. I'm getting a whole bunch of pictures as I'm talking, but they start saying to me that, you're just a young fella. You don't need to be saying those kind of things and all of that. You're too young or whatever. But I know for sure what I got is that, giving that as an example. Are you kind of saying that kind of thing,
That's what
Brian?
I'm saying. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's the first thing that comes to my mind. Yes.
Okay. I got it can be kind of an interesting, somewhat of an interesting discussion. Anybody else? Let no man despise our youth.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing that Brian said, and I think that phrase means that just like don't disregard something that someone in their youth says. Don't disregard it as we have previously said that, oh, he's young and stuff, that he doesn't know what he's talking about because he's young and inexperienced, or doesn't know too much about stuff. When you're trying to, it's like whole concept is a young person trying to educate someone who's their elder about something. Like sometimes I have a conversation with people like that, and they come off with, oh yeah, this young guy doesn't know what he's talking about. He's young and stuff, and they disregard what I have to say because to them that I'm young and inexperienced and I don't know what I'm talking about.
Interesting. I wish I could share. That's common. That's the common use of it or look of it. But I wish I could share or remember some of the conversation, what led up to the thought of that verse. I wish I could share it, but it's not coming to my mind. So I'll go to the root of, as we were in the discussion, how my mind began, when it popped in my head, and how my mind began to process it. We were talking about a little bit about coming from victim, someone who plays the role or acts like a victim. So let me give you a little context. my view or my way of illustrating victim to some degree is a person who, very important, as I'm speaking, keep this in your mind, let no man despise thy youth, is a person who has very little value or no value at all, and they have a requirement of you paying their if you would say their debt, or they have a requirement. I don't want to say debt because I know that can be confusing. They have a requirement of you doing things for them because of their quote unquote deficiency. So if we're talking about value, we're talking about the word value right now. If I have very little value, and my expectation is, my requirement is, I have very little value, and we act according to the value that we have. So I have very little value, and my expectation is, I have an expectation of people valuing me from a valueless state. Does that make sense? That might sound kind of funny.
Um,
Go ahead.
I need. I'm trying to connect the dots. So I guess I can say I understand it from where you said so far, but I need some more clarification, or some more. I guess
You
just
have a question,
continue.
or I'll go on. You have a question?
No, keep going. I guess keep going. Keep going.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So, let no man despise thy youth. And so, what I was sharing with them was that, for instance, this will give you a clue, Brian. When the children of Israel went through the wilderness, when they went through slavery, they, after that experience, was valueless, or they felt they had no value. That's what they felt. They felt they had no value. And so all of the behaviors that they had was behaviors of very little value. Even the behavior, going back to the point, they go through the wilderness, there is no food, there's no water, and they start blaming Moses for bringing them out there to die. And really, they're really charging God for bringing them out there to die. That attitude of blame and all of those kind of things, the expectation that they had of being taken care of and provided for, was victim. I'll pause and let you think about it. It was victim. All of the behaviors were victim. All right, so I started sharing. You've heard me say this before. Baptism, a scripture, it is a religiousized practice. It's done religiously, and not, I feel like the understanding of it really is not clear, why or what is happening. But baptism, when the children of Israel go down the Red Sea, it's being a picture of being buried in a water grave. So they're going to the deep or the depth. That's what it's really showing. And so they're going into a grave. They're dying. And so as they go across the Red Sea and they come into the land of Canaan, this is the process of dying. When they come up the Red Sea, this is the process of life. They're living, they're alive now. Is that understood? Okay. So anytime a person has been extremely oppressed, like the children of Israel have been oppressed, what that level of darkness does to the mind and what it grooms the mind and how it grooms the mind is you cannot erase it. The only way that it can be erased is if something dies and is born again. Does that make sense? Why the scriptures talk about being born again and all of that is to begin to renew or to begin to place value in something that is valueless. So if you've gone through and you have been oppressed and you've had all of these, I don't care if we're using spiritual terms right now, but then if we want to get real, rape, anything like that, slavery, anything like that, anything like those things, if you have gone through that, neglect, a long period or strong periods of neglect, what it does to the mind and the demands that you start having on society from that state is victim. Did that make sense? It's victim. The demands that you have from that place of being deprived. I've been so deprived, and so now I deserve this. People should do this. People should understand. They should look. All of those things, that is victim. And so in order to erase that type of thinking, in order to get clarity and erase that type of thinking, you have to go through experience of dying or being renewed. A renewed mind, a new mind. Psychology, what I call it is working with people and helping them reprogram their thinking or reprogram their mind. If you have had severe trauma, those kind of things, then the mind has to be reprogrammed. This is how psychology looks at it. This is how they do it. But the scripture terms of that is being born again, reprogramming the mind. Does that make sense? That's the scripture. So we're dealing with language now. And it's saying reprogram the mind. They have been so downtrodden in this condition that they've been in a devalued or impoverished state so long that you have to reprogram the mind when someone has gone through poverty. They will never, you can take them out of poverty and put them in a brand new place, new house, and they never know how to handle it or function with it. You have to reprogram the mind. So I want to make that clear. Let no man despise thy youth. And so now, when something has gone through, when that statement, let no man despise thy youth, is after something, the victim has been taken out of a person. They're thinking like victim. They're no longer thinking like victim. And so now what you start seeing is a branch or a tree or something budding out of the ground. And it's young, but it's budding out of the ground. But it's no longer a victim. It's something now that has value, but it's young. And when he's making that statement, he is making that statement from something that has gone through a process that has removed that old way of thinking, that has changed the victim mindset that you have or that person has. It's removed it. And now that person begins to start on a footing of value. And when they come out of the ground, so when you get a picture somewhat of this, a picture of something despising in scripture is in the story of David. Do you remember he was wrestling with the lion and the bear at home and all of that kind of stuff? And there was a giant that came, Goliath, that came, and he began to challenge the value of Israel. He began to say that you all are valueless. You have very little value. And so after David had gone through his experience with the lion and the bear and all of that, and he heard this, what spoke, what acted, what caused that man to act was the value in which he had come from. But he was young. Now, I'm trying to paint a picture that you understand that his brothers and sisters and the men that are in the army, all of those things had lost value. They all had lost value. They did not necessarily recognize it. Some of them did, but they had lost value. And then you had David come up and he hears this and he looks and he said, what? He's defying our value. And David is not feeling value. He's not feeling valueless. And as he gets ready to go forward to take out this giant, they start saying, who is this little fella? He's not. So the way that word despise means, in essence, to look down upon. That's a part of the description of it. But it's a behavior of looking down upon this and saying, you're not value. What value are you of? And so, in essence, David he proved what his value was. And his life, if you watch his life, his value increased. As he went forward, his value increased. So that's just to give you an idea. But when this statement is made, it is made of people who have lost their valueless state. And as long as you play victim, you will be valueless. That's the short version of it. Now I'll let you all have it. What say you?
It connects a lot of dots, especially for me from my own like personal life experience. So yeah.
The question, Brian, is yes, I would agree. I know your background, I know your history. And I would say yes. There are things that have happened in your experience. I'm not going through the details or anything. You divulge what you want to open up. But there are things that have happened in your history, different experiences that were were more or less contributing to your lack of value. I would say that.
Right, right. But let me
Hmm?
but on at the same token, I feel like, you know, God has definitely like brought me out on the other side, because I can relate to David as far as where I've gotten to the point, or did get to the point where it's like it's like, yeah, we got value over here, we got what we need, you know. And just certain
Mhm.
situations that I've been in, it's almost kind of like I felt like Caleb and Joshua in a lot of situations in my life and stuff, because it's just
Mhm.
looking around, you have people around, I guess based off of what you were saying, as far as coming from that victimized standpoint, and you know, from what I've from what has transpired in my life, has given me the confidence, or whatever, um as God has put into me, that it's like we
Mhm.
do have value. And especially as I've gotten older and I've gotten more experience, and it's been able to like solidify that, you know, we definitely have value, and it's something that we can stand on, and fight against. Like one of the things that like my father used to tell me all the time when I was growing up is others may, but you cannot. And that was one of the you know, whenever I got to the point where I was like, well, I want to do what such and such is doing. You know, they got a TV in their house. They're watching TV. They're doing this. They're doing that. But as I get older, I've been able to like really, you know, my mom and a lot of people would say, also keep on living. You know, and so I guess what I the things that, as I've gotten
Mhm.
older, and the challenges that are faced in certain situations, my background prepared me for it. Like,
Mhm.
so, and then just going with different things that have happened, with my mother passing away and different things like that, and being able to uh, really be able to, I guess, hone in on my strengths, and being able to find out that I have value. I even have more value, and it can be a positive contribute. And then, of course,
Mhm.
one of the big things too is having a child, my son. Um, and with along with that, so it's like, oh yeah, I can see my value. I can see my what I contribute and bring to the table, as very valuable for being influential in his life. Um,
Right.
so, and then let me see if I have one more thing. Let's see if I can pull this. I think I was about to mention. Um,
Yeah, Brian,
illustrating. So I'll land it there.
I what I want to do is try to um, kind of complete this picture. And I think the more that we are able to complete it, the more that you're able to understand, and it will begin to bridge the gap for you in those areas, in a lot of the areas. Um, Value, I was saying that one of the points that come to my mind in connecting it back to some of the things that were said today, as you were talking, Brian, is in our relationships with our husband and our wife, husband and wife, and those types of relationships, if the husband comes into the relationship as a victim, and this happens oftentimes, and the wife comes into the relationship as a victim, that means that both have very little value. They will begin to chew or eat, so to speak, or on each other. They will begin to have requirements of you value me, insistence, behaviors of communicating it by force, different ways of forcing. And then all of those things are coming from a very depleted or valueless state. So some of them going full circle to what some of the things that we talked about, it brings that to my mind. Again, I can see someone who feels like the scripture is just saying, when it says despise thy youth, it's just saying that let no man despise you because you're young. Versus this is really talking about young in the context of receiving value or having value. In language, in real strong spiritual language, that there are two sides of it. It can be confusing to some. If something is valueless, then it is to be burned or discarded, different things like that. If something has value in it, then it is to be nurtured or brought up, those kind of things. And so it's kind of hard to see, because the way we think is, the way our minds think is, well, the lady that came to Jesus, who they were going to stone, the harlot, she had very little value, and this is why she was actually doing this. And Jesus actually came and he gave her value. That's how our minds would think. I'm not going to go through and try to break all of that part of it down yet, but there is also a side or a language of something that is valueless. For instance, if God comes and he sees a tree that is not bearing fruit, or this thing has very little, it's not bearing fruit or anything, then it basically purges it, it cuts it off. It says this is of very little value. And it prunes it, or whatever you would call it, and say this is no value, and it cuts it off and it sets it aside for burning or whatever. But then the value of that tree or the value of that vine begins to produce. So again, you see some kind of going through a dying process, going through a process that actually brings about value. Does that make sense? Okay, so
Yes.
all right, so that's a little bit of what was on my mind this week. That's a little bit of what the other day it was very interesting to me, because I never looked at that verse from the angle of it really saying something is showing the word youth is actually describing something that is coming up that is full of value, not something that is coming up that is without value.
Um, I hope this doesn't confuse things, but I understand. It was really interesting what you just said. It kind of reminds me of when you talk about Proverbs generally, and you talk about the point of contrast. So something that was coming up in my mind when you first presented the verse, I would say was almost a point of contrast, but I think that when you explained it, you hit the middle point. So even when you clarified what youth was, and it reminds me of maturity, and when you've talked about being proven, because you can take it literally and say it's a point of age, as in someone is 80 years old, for example. um, but anyway, I think that you clarified that point. One thing I think, just to kind of give an illustration of the other point that came to my mind that I feel like you addressed, but it's in Proverbs when it talks about when it talks about the general idea of my son, receive instruction. When you've talked about going through a process of being proven, from validation, affirmation, confirmation, I feel like it also addresses when and how Proverbs defines something as being foolish. And I think that, just to give a light example of, if you take that verse too far, and again, I think that you addressed it, I'm just expressing what I heard. If you take that verse too far, you can see how it can be common from generation to generation. So you talked about how, just to give a light example, how someone, or a young person, or someone who is young within that process, or within that framework, demands consideration, or demands or I would say, in one sense, overshoots their authority from a valueless position, and don't go through the process, in one sense, of being proven. That was interesting. And there was something else that yeah, I don't know if it's at all appropriate, because I think that you kind of touched on it, but when you talk about not despising youth, in one sense, being it having a message for a message that is like, let patience have her perfect work. So in one sense, understand the proving process. So anyway, I don't know if that quite made sense, but that was some of the things that came to mind when you just explained that. I thought it was really interesting.
Yeah, interesting. A part of what comes to my mind again is when we read the scriptures about things being pruned so that it can produce more fruit. We don't necessarily do that in what I call a practical sense. What does it look like I'm being pruned? Yeah, the church I went to kind of gave you maybe a sense of it, but it was still not clear. Something pruned, and if you're going to prune something, you have to be able to judge it. You have to be able to judge, and you have to be able to see that this part here needs to be cut off, or this part here needs to be cut off. I even think, in just full circle, in the things that we talked about today, in our relationships with our children, the relationships with our wives, again, men having the ability to judge, which means to assess and prescribe what is needed for the continuance of life of this thing. That's a judgment. And so when I say prune, it also means that something is being judged. I'm looking at the tree and I'm judging this tree and I'm assessing and saying these parts need to go. As these parts go, it will make this tree be able to produce even a greater quantity or a better quantity or whatever, things like that. So that is the position of usually the father. That's the position of the father of the house, the dad. He must be able to assess. And then when he is disciplining, it is just understanding what helps this person reach their potential. That is why God prunes a tree, is so that it can reach its potential.
So I don't want to go backwards. So, okay, that's a disclaimer. I'm working on that. When I was talking earlier about consistent communication, that was something that came up. So you talk about Peshat, Remez, Darash, and Soul. And when you brought up the verse of 4 Timothy, the 12th chapter, the fourth chapter of the 12th verse, when I was reading it, this is something that the scripture itself, that's it's okay. And this is kind of what CJ talked about, but when you broke it down, that's how since I met you, that's how I've had to learn how to do things. So from a foundational point. And so what you're talking about, even in pruning, that's what I almost, so and CJ was talking about maturity. That's almost how I see that verse, which you talked about, where it's like despising not when you're in that growing and that maturing phase. Because for me, like what this week and past weeks have helped to bring up was the consistency aspect of it. That when something is growing, and when the thing that is growing is being judged, it's easy for that thing to want to get out of that place. It's easy for that thing to want to get to the place where they're being judged from. So they're in a maturing and having to learn patience, learn an entire new way of thinking. Because like you said, when something is that far removed from standard or the true point of it, it can't be fixed. Not that God's not powerful enough to fix it, but it's even like why Sabbath is just replaying in my head, because it shows consistency, that it was this, that understanding the maturing process, understanding it's just interesting to me, because after you showed me how to read for the root of a word, not just, oh, it says despise not thy youth. Well, I don't despise when I was a kid, because that's what the Bible tells me to do. You know what I mean? It goes beyond that, and it's actually showing you how to get to your potential, get to that perfect place. So it's, again, everybody says our religion likes to use, or whatever, they have an idol or a, you know, oh, be like Christ, you know what I mean? And you miss the points of it, saying Christ had to be pruned, so he was perfect. You know what I mean? It wasn't that how we look at it. And I'm not saying it, yeah, it starts getting like the verse where it's having to actually do the work of that thing that is maturing, having to actually, so you talked about this where I think you said it's Paul, where he healed the blind man and asked him, hey, what do you see? He said, oh, I see men walking as trees. Like, you know what I mean? Where it's like that first thing, once you're in that maturing spot, is not
Right.
the ending point. And so don't get mad at that point that, well, this is what I saw. Now you're judging me and telling me that that's wrong when you're the one who touched my eyes. You know what I mean? So what Chris was talking about, ego, having to get rid of that so that you're able to assume the position that the Father is trying to give you. Because again, that is the whole point of the Bible, is showing that he wants to give us glory. He wants to give us something. It was never about him coming from a valueless point. So it's like, again, like even all the consistency of what you've been trying to build with the foundation, and you know, Chris brought this up where it's like, man, I used to get so mad at you because it's like, I already know this. You know what I mean? You're the one who told me how to read the Bible. So you know what I mean? Like just all of the feelings that come up from having to go through the Red Sea. Because again, we look at it like it's just some easy, God's guiding me, so it's an easy journey. And it's so much more than that. And so being eye to eye, that's just some of what was brought up.
You did a good job, Jake. That was good. I understand it. Anybody else? All right. Well, I guess it'd be time to bring it to a close. Been good. We'll do it again next week.
It's been a
Anybody
good one,
want to?
though.
What's that?
It's been a good one.
Okay.
You guys have a great week this week.
All
Yeah,
right.
thanks you too,